How's it going, everyone? Afar here. Welcome to Heliopolis Radio. Thank you all for tuning in. Today, we've been fortunate to be joined by Lilly Rachels. She's a relationship coach with a master's degree in social work. So she's here to tell us a bit about the relationships, why it's important to have a relationship coach, and how to better the dynamics in the relationships that we have today. And so, without further ado, Lilly, I hand it over to you. Tell us about yourself and what is it that you love to do.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm Lily, as you said. And yes, I work as a relationship coach. I'm a former therapist, and I got into this work because I'm really passionate about helping people get out of their heads, back into their hearts so they can communicate. I tell my clients a lot that for me, it's not about you having a perfect relationship or staying together forever. I hope that's what you get if that's like what you truly desire. But more than anything, I want you to be able to communicate so you don't have relationships that fall away due to misunderstandings. And you're able to be your true, authentic self and show up in the relationship that way instead of walking on eggshells and kind of hiding who you are and overthinking everything. So that's what I do. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I guess a little bit about me in my free time. We were just talking about dogs before we got on. I have several pups with my partner, and we love to travel.
Incredible, incredible. And so yeah, actually, thank you for mentioning that. So my next question, if you don't mind me asking, your nomadic way of life, if I understand that you do live on the road from time to time, I just wanted to ask how that is, how the experience of living on the road is. Was there something about being on the move constantly that's personally fulfilling to you? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned by living a nomadic way of life
Mm.
for the most part?
Yeah. So we've this year, I would say, I think we spent 3 months on the road so far this year, mostly the summers, because it's just better traveling and it's easier to travel then. And one thing I love about it that I tell everyone is if you're someone like me who you love to see new places, but you also really like to be in your own space, we travel in our small RV. So it's like you're unpacked and you're packed at the same time. So you have all of your things around you. It's your bed, you're not having to dig through a suitcase or jump on an airplane. So I love that. And then you just get to, explore so much beauty that the world has to offer. And for me, what I love most about it is being outside and getting to see places that you don't just fly into for a day, like you actually have to, drive to get to or even hike to get to. And it's a different experience. It definitely has its challenges with staying consistent with things like work. You're in close proximity.
Mm,
So any issues in your relationship will come up because
mm.
you spend a lot of time with the person you're traveling with.
100%. That's I mean, I guess we spoke about this earlier. It's definitely something I would want to do myself, but as you mentioned, it's traveling is difficult, let alone with another person. And when that person's your partner, as you mentioned, you really got to have your dynamic really well in order so that you don't step on anyone's toes. And it's always a constant good, otherwise it's a long road trip, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
the more self-awareness, the better, and the better you get at experiencing and expressing your emotions in a healthy way, the better it will be. We actually love it. I feel like we thrive when we're on the road together, just because we're both doing something we really enjoy doing.
incredible. And what are some of the not key places, but what are some of the highlight locations that you've traveled to within the US?
Within the US, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho was beautiful. I love anywhere in Montana, but Montana was beautiful. And then not in the US, but we did make it up to Whistler in Canada, and that was my
Oh, it's
all-time
beautiful.
favorite place.
Beautiful. Whistler
So
is beautiful. I lived in Vancouver for 4 years. I didn't mention that to you.
really,
Yeah, I was in
no,
British Columbia for some time. So, it's funny. I didn't actually, I should have gone to Whistler, but I did go down to Alberta. You know where Banff is, the lake is. Yeah, I did the
I
drive down
haven't been
there.
there yet.
Um,
That's on the list for me. It
Please,
looks just
please, please.
beautiful.
Absolutely. Especially summertime, the lake literally is, crystal blue and everything. But no, those are really, really good locations. And I guess just kind of moving forward, you mentioned I know we kind of jumped in from nomadic travel and now we're kind of coming back to relationships. I was reading through your bio and everything, and you mentioned inner child work, and inner child work is a very common theme that's brought up in a lot of I guess, personal development material that's out there today.
Mhm.
Kind of in my generation, that word is kind of thrown around loosely, like inner child. Oh, I said this to you, my inner child is hurting and everything like that. But we throw it around loosely. But as a relationship coach and as someone who understands psychology to the degree that you do, what does inner child work do to your psyche, and why is it so important?
Yes, thanks for that question. So, when I talk about inner child work, I'm talking about when I work with someone going back to understand the root cause of whatever pattern it is that's playing out in your relationship, that's playing out in your life, that's keeping you from connection. So, it's not that, some people do this where, we're going to talk to our inner child. What I typically do is we go back and we look at events that have happened, some memories you have, or if you're not really sure what those things are, the pattern of behavior that you keep reliving, we'll start to explore like, well, what was that rooted in? And we start to deal with that situation from the lens of how you looked at it when you were little. For example, if you struggle with being like emotionally open in a relationship and really letting someone in, likely something happened early on when you were younger that taught you that, oh, if I'm closed off, I keep myself safe. So I'm safe if I just keep to myself, if I hold back from people, I'm protecting myself. And so, in order to face that pattern, we have to look at, well, what happened to, 6 or 7 year old you, and
Mm.
how were you handling that, like in that moment, versus trying just to, push through it as an adult. So that's when I talk about inner child work. It's going back to find the root cause of the patterns that are keeping you from connection with other people.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. And I guess the question I had just to follow up on that was um, some of, as you mentioned, a lot of people, most of us, in actual fact, all of us have childhood traumas that we undergo. But there's some certain traumas that are very detrimental to our psyche, maybe just because of the nature of the trauma. And uh, would you say sometimes it's dangerous for someone to relive the memory of something very bad that happened to them and perhaps relapse into a state that is non-recoverable? Sometimes they say some things are just better left, alone, and you move forward and you just accept it for what it is. But to relive trauma that's, I guess, embedded in your psyche, is it perhaps maybe detrimental to your current state of health if the trauma itself is a bit too difficult to handle? I know it's a very weird
Yeah.
question, but I guess
No,
from
it's a great question because I think that a lot of harm is done in the therapy world when we try to, get someone to open up too quickly and share something that they're not ready. We have to remember that, sometimes our brain doesn't even let us remember certain things for a reason. It's trying to protect us because that thing was so detrimental, so bad.
mm,
And so I would say that yes and no. I think there can be cases where maybe it's not helpful to
mm,
dig that deep. But what I would really say is it's the support you have while you're doing it. So if it's a really severe trauma, I would suggest someone do like a somatic experiencing type of supportive therapy, like where you're not getting down and just talking about what happened, but you're noticing like where is it in your body.
mm,
And so yes, if you're not working with someone who is trained in dealing with that kind of trauma, then I would say best not to just try to force yourself to remember something and talk about it. But if you
mm.
have that support and you can work through where the trauma is actually stored in your body, then that can be really helpful and change your life.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being giving an honest account of that. Just recognizing that things are difficult and some things are easier. It's
Yeah.
really a lot of coaches that people tend to engage with. It's just always getting to it and getting done with it. Sometimes you don't understand the mechanism. So the fact that you have that awareness, it's really appreciated. And I guess as a relationship coach, do you feel that our psyche, the broken relationships in our society today, particularly my generation, and looking back at some of my past relationships with previous partners, I just called it a trauma fest. It was just a absolute mess of this is what happened to me. Help me deal with it. Or this is what someone else did to me. Be the conduit for me to deal with it. And I guess maybe it may be wrong to say this, but there are two sides of me. There's a part of me that believes a relationship is a mutual process of spiritual growth moving forward, meaning
Mhm.
that you're meeting with someone. in order to have a experience that's unpredictable or uncalculatable moving forward. But at the same time, based on experience now, relationships do have that your childhood and your previous pains and suffering are being somewhat healed through your connection to this person for better and for worse. Because I've realized some relationships tend to end once the trauma is resolved, once
Mm.
the daddy issues are resolved, once the mommy issues are resolved, people break up. And then I don't know, this in our society, relationships don't tend to go past, you're fortunate to get past a year. And particularly in
Hmm.
my age group. And if you really find the love of your life, and again, I say you're very fortunate, it's a handful. Most of us in our generation with our issues, with our problems, doesn't last too long. So I'm wondering, would you attribute this issue to the unresolved trauma which resides in all of our psyches? Or is it just a societal problem in the way we conduct ourselves as a society, just how we behave
Hmm.
now today? I don't know.
Yeah. You know, it's definitely nuanced, and it's kind of like I don't think there's a black and white answer. There's a lot of gray area in there. I think on one hand, I like to come back to the idea of don't bleed on the person who didn't cut you. And I think there's a lot of that going on in relationships where we get in a relationship with someone and we expect them to like love the trauma out of us. When
Mm,
it's not the other person's job to come in and fix me or heal the parts of me that were hurt when I was younger or from past relationships. But we have this expectation now that this person is going to come into our life and just fill up any, crack anything that's not good. And so I think that part of the reason relationships don't last is our expectation of what a relationship is supposed to give us has gotten higher. And some of that is because, years ago we got into relationships. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like a pyramid. And on the bottom, we have things like, safety or food and shelter, safety and security. And we used to get in relationships for those reasons. Like it was, people stayed alive longer when they were in relationships. And it was like
mm,
it kept us safe and we could combine our resources. But in the world we live in today, that's starting to change where, well, maybe I don't need to be in a relationship. I can do those things on my own. So now I'm looking for love and belonging.
mm,
And I think I'm in my 30s, I look at my parents' generation. I think they were still, some of it was like resources, but a lot of that, I think they were coming together for love and belonging. And
mm,
then as we get to the top of the pyramid, we have like self-actualization. And I kind of think now we're in a place where we're almost looking for partners that are going to fulfill our self-actualization
mm,
needs, which
understood.
personally I think that's way too much to expect from a romantic partner.
Mm,
Just because, we're all imperfect people. Like, so I don't think there's one person that's going to come in and, shoot me to the top of the pyramid where I'm like, oh, everything about my life is better now. So I do think that plays into relationships ending. It's just like the reason we get into them are they're for different reasons now than they used to be. And also, I look back at my grandparents' generation, there was very much this idea of if something is broken, you fix it, whether it's repairing a hole in your shoe or continuing on with your marriage. And today we live in a society where we get everything very quickly and we
mm.
throw things out very quickly. And I think it's part of that mindset. It's not very sustainable where, well, how could I, take this relationship I have and work for both of us to work and grow it and make it stronger. Sometimes it's easier, especially if you're dating on an app where you can just slide through people very quickly to just be like, well, maybe I'll just try a different one.
You actually touched on to my next question is, do you think the hookup culture has destroyed our ability to establish true connections, like true, honest, sincere relationships with each other, with the advent of technology, and with other detrimental things, like you get, pornography, you get all sorts of things that kind of destroy people's ability to connect with each other. Do you feel that has really been a shifting factor in how our relationships are kind of not broken down, but they're not as well established as they were in more traditional communities? Like as you mentioned, like your parents, your grandparents, that yes, you could see that these are two different personalities and perhaps they're not even meant to get along with each other, but some way, somehow they just made it work, even if it's like, and you say to yourself, it was in today's society, my time, definitely not happening.
Yeah, and I would say I do think there's something beautiful today in the fact that most of the time when someone's in a relationship, it's because they want to be there, not
Mm,
because like, oh, I have to be there. And I do think there's something beautiful about that. But yeah, with today's technology, like we'll take like online dating or dating through apps, it's almost like people are more like items on a menu. And you can, whereas if you were to meet someone in your community, you likely know something about them. Maybe there's
mm,
even some sort of like an acquaintance or some kind of friendship there. And so you might start to develop attraction for them based on things you like their values, things that
mm,
you kind of, oh, I know about their values, I know about this. Whereas on an app, we're basing it solely off of, a couple of things they say about themselves and what they physically look like.
mm.
Where maybe you've experienced this, and I know I have in relationships where maybe you'll go out with someone and you're like, it might not have been my first choice on like the aesthetic, but like you get to
Yeah.
know someone and you fall in love, like their energy, their everything. And so I think that is missing when we're just online dating and people are choosing people just based on, what they look like and then their few credentials, maybe they're, whatever it is they're sharing with me on the app. And we don't have as much of that like underlying connection to where, when you meet someone in a similar social circle as you or again in your
Mm.
community.
No, true. Now I'm gonna go delete my bubble.
No, no, no. I do have plenty of friends that have had long-term
No,
relationships
no,
from that.
no,
It's just,
no.
I think it's the intention you go in with too. I do
Mm,
believe that energetically, like when we set our intention on what we're looking for, it's easier for the things that are not in alignment with that to fall away.
mm,
So it's like if you go into it, and use it how you want to use it. Like I don't, if you want to use it as a hookup app, like then use it as that and
mm.
be intentional with that and be honest with yourself. But if you're like, no, I want a relationship that's going to go beyond a year, then it's like it's helpful to know, well, then these are my core values. This is what I'm looking for. And if the people I start to interact with like have very different values, I'm not going to continue, kind of playing with them and having fun with them. I'm going to stay in my intention and stay in alignment with the thing I want most.
That's beautifully said. That's really beautifully said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I still will delete it though. Um, no, and so just coming to some of the programs that you run, if you don't mind me asking, what type of programs do you run? Do you work with people via online? Do you do in person? Obviously, you mentioned you have a quite a different schedule from most people.
Yeah.
So yes, and do you work with people regionally and internationally, or are you just keeping it local currently?
So I work with anyone, anywhere. I'm very open to that. Most of what I do is either like this on Zoom or I even do audio only a lot of the time with clients.
Mm,
And I offer programs every once in a while. I'll do a program and I have kind of my, I guess, higher tiered kind of 3 months intensive I'll do with people.
mm,
But for the most part, what I do is session to session. So people will either come for a session, they'll buy a package of sessions, and we'll work together that way. And my true passion is in, I love to write about this work and talk about this work, doing things like this. So that's where my true passion lies. So I have like a membership where people can get more of that. So we
mm.
might not necessarily be working with each other one on one. They have an option up, to do that as well. But sometimes they'll come just for, we'll do workshops and kind of group coaching circles once a month through that.
So no, thank you. And if you, I will put the links in the description and obviously in the
Yeah,
video for people to access.
thank you. I appreciate that. It's relearnrelationships.com or www.relearnrelationships.com, but I'll make sure you have that link. And yeah, that's where most of my longer form content lives.
And so I guess kind of maybe just summing up. I know it was quite rapid fire in terms of questions, but again, time constraints and everything. I tried to make the best out of it. I guess you mentioned that already the website. In terms of contacting you, how would you want people to reach out to you? Not how can, but how would you want people to reach out to you? And again, how do people would there say a certain time frame in which you run the programs? You mentioned some of them are seasonal, but are they programs which are every weekly or bi-weekly for people who are more wanting to be engaged and things like that?
Yeah, so with the membership, I run it through Substack. I don't, have you heard of Substack?
Yes, 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 yes.
Kind of that's my favorite social media platform. And with that, I do a workshop and a group coaching circle once a month
Once a
each.
month. Nice.
So, and then they get other content in between. When I work with people individually, it's typically every week or every other week. And then when I do a group program, we meet every 2 weeks. But I haven't launched one of those in a while because I'm really focusing on the Substack right now
No.
and writing. But yeah, so to get in touch with me, honestly, messaging me on there. Also any of the social media platforms. I'm Lilly Rachels on Instagram. And then if you go to the my website, relearnrelationships.com, you can email me from there as well. My email is all over there. So I love it when people just shoot me an email because then I know I'm going to get it.
No problem. Thank you for sharing that. And again, the website and the email will be in the link in the description, guys. For those of you that are tuning in, feel free to reach out to Lily. Please don't hesitate. This is what this
Please do. I
platform is
love to
for.
talk to
Yes.
people.
And I guess lastly, what are your words of wisdom and advice for the audience tuning in today?
Oh, words of wisdom and advice. That it's okay to need other people. I think we live in a world that tells us we need to be hyper independent, we need to take care of ourselves, and we do need to do that growth work on ourselves to heal the parts of ourselves that keep us from connection. But at the end of the day, we're pack animals and we're
Mhm.
wired to connect with others. So if you feel lonely and you feel disconnected, it's okay to want to be in a relationship, to want to be in communicate a community that's very natural. And I think it's very necessary. And so I would encourage you to seek that out and to follow that desire.
Thank you so much for that. And that was beautiful. And it's been an honor to have you on the podcast, Lily. Wishing you the best as you continue your travels. Hopefully, you come down this side and visit us. It's always good to expose yourself to new cultures, learn new things, particularly with the lifestyle you live. It's the core essence of it. So, looking forward to you coming this side. Let me know when you're here.
Oh yes,
All right.
no, that absolutely that would be a bucket list trip, and I hope to do that one day. And I do think it's the one thing that's so beautiful about technology is having a conversation like this when we are
100%, 100%.
half a world away from each other, but still able to have a
To
conversation. It's so
conversation.
beautiful.
No, it's been an
Thank you for
absolute
having me.
pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.